Hi, everybody. It's Miles Ward. Welcome to Cloud and Clear. We are back together, and today's event is going to be really a good one. We are talking about 2025 futures, artificial intelligence, what's coming next. I cannot be more fired up about bringing my friend Simon Margolis to this conversation. We've been in a couple conversations together over the 5 years that I've been here, but this one's going to be a doozy. I'm looking forward to it. Simon, say hi to everybody.
Hey everybody, yeah, Simon Margolis. I am the Associate CTO here at SADA for AI and ML stuff. So I get to work with Miles and all of our awesome customers breaking all sorts of cool new technologies.
Breaking is the active word. I
That's right.
appreciate that a lot. Simon has stuck his head right in the center of hundreds of new products from Google Cloud over the course of even just the last couple of years. All these new APIs and systems. What we're going to talk about today is not the hair-raising antics of 2024, but the bristling possibilities of 2025. I have every expectation that we are about to get into an even more roller coaster, and maybe Simon and I can go back and forth on a couple ideas about how the new year will change the game, especially around AI, which is changing so quickly. Simon, maybe take a lead off. What's top of mind for you? What do you think 25 holds for everybody working in this tech?
There's a ton. This
Sure.
ecosystem is evolving, so quickly. You bat your eyes and there's some new paradigm that's being explored, which is awesome. It's not like, oh, a new company came out doing the same thing. It's folks are doing radically different, brand new things. So it's a really exciting spot. And I think there's a bunch of stuff I hope we can talk about today that we're expecting to see. But the one thing that is kind of right in my face that I think is right on the horizon as we move into 2025 is kind of this. I don't want to say debate, but this emergence of two types of AI tooling that developers can work with. And on the one hand, you have kind of and I really hate to call this traditional because it's traditional as of like 9 months ago, but uh,
Exactly.
there's this traditional approach of as a developer, I am selecting a model, I'm working with that model, I might be fine tuning that model, I might be using a framework like LangChain to really connect all the bits, and I'm building the same way I'd build many different types of very similar software development process to any kind of application that I may be building. Just so happens I'm working with these AI components to do it. The stuff that I see kind of emerging now are these platform companies. And so, OpenAI is stuck their toe in here. Google, I think, is doing a fantastic job at doing stuff like this within the Google world. This is something like Agent Builder, where you're sort of abstracting a layer on top of those technologies. And so you don't need to be some LangChain experienced developer. You maybe are, Bob in accounting, and you go, I wish I had a way to automate some process, and I think these large language models and this Gen AI thing probably can help me with that stuff. I need a platform that can help me do that. I'm not thinking about what framework, and like, am I using LangChain? Am I using some other framework? I'm not even thinking probably about what model I'm using. I'm just thinking
Sure.
about here's the problem. I want to go solve it. So I see an emergence of those type. I'm calling them like AI platforms versus kind of models. I think that is starting to be a big deal and is going to be a really big deal going into 2025.
Yeah, I'm having throughout this sort of bloom of AI, I keep having cloud flashbacks, right? Like AWS gave everybody EC2, and there were a whole bunch of developers that figured that out, and there were a whole much bigger set of them that didn't, and waited around for first it was Elastic Beanstalk, and then several iterations after that as folks tried to bring the technical horsepower, the capability closer to the user, make it easier to consume. I would agree with that. I think even in my view, the current revisions of platforms, Agent Builder is a great example that you gave. I think a lot of the platform as a service software development companies are going to start veering right, going like, oh, okay, hold on, like, how do I make sure that mine's the platform not just for building software, but for building AI powered software? All of them have the same kind of need to bring those technologies into their ecosystem as the other ISV and software businesses need to, right? If it's going to start to feel like table stakes to be able to have a conversation with the help manual as opposed to just searching through the help manual. helping people build the conversational help manual becomes a pretty important function for a bunch of the application platforms, whether that's Vercel and Netlify and Heroku and all the rest of those. Um, Simon, talk to me a bit about, I think the onset for me of this whole thing was a clamoring for use cases. What are all the things we can do with this? What kinds of use cases stand out as new in 2025 that maybe really weren't available in 2024?
Yeah, really, really good question and good, great point. I kind of somewhat famously gave that talk in I think it was next 2021, set called Beyond Chatbots, because while chatbots had been all the hype, I think there's a lot more out there. Well, in 2024, we've largely still seen a lot of those type of use cases, a lot of very chat oriented use cases, which are great, and they serve a lot of good, like you said. Chatting with my manual is kind of like table stakes, right? And so the technologies have evolved to a point where that is table stakes. And I think we have a great ability to do that stuff. Doesn't necessarily tremendously move the needle in an enterprise setting. It is an increase in efficiency and ease of use for a lot of different data retrieval jobs and breaking down silos and things like that. But what I think is starting to emerge are these agentic based workflows, and that enables all sorts of cool things that, ironically, yes, could be still chat based, but could also be a lot of other things as well. And so what we've seen are things as rudimentary as today I operate a business where a user has to go onto my website and book a hotel room. And most of my users can do that pretty easily, but hey, it's not maybe the easiest UX and UI, and sometimes they want to talk to a human being, but we're not a 24-hour business. We're not open all the time. And so sometimes they want to call us. We're not there. And it's a really, uncomfortable workflow, or
Sure,
we might lose the sale or whatever. So now I can have an agent that will just be a 24-hour, virtual agent, lives on my website, that can not only give information like kind of our 2023, 2024 chatbots could do, but can take an action now. It can say, okay, it looks like you want this. I got availability on this night. You want to book it? You do? Great. Give me your credit card information. You are booked. And it can take that action. It can write back to our customers' booking software. It can update that software. They've gone and done stuff. So this concept of these agents that can take an action, not just read but write, I think that is really powerful stuff. And these agents don't have to be chat based. They can be living where our customers are living. So what I think we're starting to see now is I'm in my CRM, and I just finished a meeting with my customer, and maybe I have maybe the transcript of that conversation is going to be summarized and added to my CRM. That's and I say that as if it's non. I mean, those are big engineering leaps, but that stuff's kind of already happening in 2024. What I think 2025 brings with these agents is I've got an agent that's looking at all of my information and sale in my CRM, and it's going in and saying, okay, I heard this customer just had this conversation with you. I read that summary. Looks like we have about 5 other customers doing something really similar. You guys want to have a webinar where we get all these folks together? It looks like they're all kind of doing the same thing. You should do that webinar. They're all in your patch. They're all closing in Q4, and you probably want to talk to them. I'm going to add that note proactively to your CRM that says, hey, this might be a good idea. And I'm going to send you an email to remind you about that so that you can go and take that action. That's the type of workload that I think agents are starting to unlock, and you could, on and on and on. I mean, these are just a couple examples, but you could imagine that type of bi-directional, I almost hate to say co-pilot, but this co-pilot that's kind of helping human users be more expeditious at their jobs, be more efficient. I think that's some of the fun stuff we're starting to see.
I think that's spot on. There, I remember the first time, I was having a debate with a couple of customers about, kind of should they be invested in the kind of chatbots yet, and and it struck me like it's kind of the wrong question, right? It's not kind of, it's absolutely the wrong question. It's sort of, and I think for a lot of the upper level business decision makers, the reason that it's wrong is that it talks about how you get there and it does not talk about where you're going. So like, is where I'm, if I'm in a car, is where I'm going that I have cruise control, or that, that no, yes, that makes it easier to go someplace, but I don't care if I'm going to go, around in circles in the parking lot. Like I'm trying to get from A to B. And so I think a lot of the miscommunication about use cases has been, centered on kind of what is the experience you're going to give to a user, where I think most employers and most businesses are trying to figure out, what are we going to do when we give them that experience? Where are we trying to get them to go? And I think a lot of that also has been limited, by a lot of businesses thinking in terms of what their employees do, right? Like which of the tasks that my people currently do will I have a technology do instead? Which is like this really reductionist and kind of limited view, right? Like what are the things that you can't imagine having a person do because they're either so low value, that you couldn't figure out how to get ROI on a person doing that, but if you had a machine to do it, maybe the ROI gets much, more tractable because the cost point is so much lower, and the other way around. What are things that would be so impossibly expensive to have somebody do that you don't even consider them because they're just off the table, where all of a sudden maybe now that stuff is within reach? I think, even those feel like, places where, I hate it when folks dodge the question, right? Like if I'm a business owner, and I think this is something we've talked about a bit, like companies just really do not have a depth of imagination here. They're hoping that businesses like us can get into, what are the actual tactical things that have proven useful, from these tools. I think there's like a give an easy example, one that's really close to home for us, right? Like, should our engineers be using AI to help them write software? Like, I think wildly that's still like not even really a solved debate in most businesses.
Right.
But plenty of businesses don't feel like that's, that all this does is make more bugs for my senior engineers to review, and it's not actually moving the process of software development forward. Where do you think that fits in 2025, and does that state change?
Well, I no, I think you're actually hitting on a really key thing that I think we're going to see blow up next year, which is I think that those two opposite kind of sides of the problem spectrum that you just described are exactly where I don't think it's a and I don't think it's an or, I think it's both.
Hmm,
I think we're going to see AI use cases on both sides of that because I think you're going to have the exciting, workloads where you are going to actually have AI generated code, right? And we're starting to see that
sure.
now, where we have folks that are not developers at all, and they go, you know what? I think this stuff is advanced enough that I'm going to build my first Python application. I'm going to launch it, in Cloud Run or something. And I've never done anything with those products ever before. And I'm going to have an AI, combination of, code assistant in my development platform, but also maybe Gemini in like, Google Cloud Platform to tell me like, oh, you want to do this with Cloud Run, and like here's what you want to click and where you want to go. So I think you're gonna have those kind of sci-fi, mind blowing, like, oh my god, I just created an application with just writing English words. But I think there's also a ton of opportunity on the totally opposite side of that spectrum, which is, again, to your point, it's not replacing what a human does, or if it is replacing what a human does, it's not replacing what a human likes to do. So I'm thinking, enterprises are going to pick this up because every traveling salesperson, can't wait to get back to their computer and start entering expense reports, right? That's just what everybody jumps out of bed and they can't wait. So, that is where AI plays a really important role because it's going to say, okay, I'm looking at the photos on this person's photo app. I see a bunch of these are receipts. Looks like they were traveling during this time. It looks like they were visiting with this customer. I'm going to submit that, or I'm going to prepare this draft expense report. You just accept it or don't accept it, and now you're saving hours of work that the person was doing. So I'll take that back. Yes, it is replacing work that a human was doing, but this is not why that person's hired. This person's not getting paid money because they're great at entering their expense reports, and this person also is not, like, I was being facetious. Obviously, they're not jumping out of bed getting excited about doing this work. So I think it's kind of like both. You're going to see, I think, a lot more of those boring, not fun workloads get offloaded, but I also do think we're going to continue to see these pretty sci-fi amazing. I mean, before this recording started, we were mentioning Waymo. that is the sci-fi crazy stuff, right? These cars drive themselves. I was actually in a car Waymo recently that the person in front of them wasn't moving and was supposed to, and it honked at them to get them to move. I mean, so that I think you're also going to see a tremendous emergence of, and I think there's going to be things that we aren't even thinking about right now that we're going to see AI start to do in as short a timeline as probably 6 months from now. But I do think it's both. I think it's on both sides of that.
Yeah, I think that there's any time you sort of dangle the tantalizing possibility of reducing friction for employees, that is there are two sides of that. There's the very beginning where a couple of companies are going to get sort of an undue advantage because they're getting more productive work out of an individual person, or they're able to deliver a more delightful experience to a customer, or they have the ability to sort of get people excited, or help with morale because they don't have to deal with a bunch of this stuff that's just utterly frustrating and robotic. See what I did there. um, the far side of that I think will be the fastest turnover of this sensation in the history of technology in 2025 is that if you don't have it now, your employees will complain about it,
Yep.
and will feel like demoralized because you have not invested in their ability to be successful, right? Like, think about like the kind of work from home thing. Like, I worked from home. I've been working from home for 13 years. And when I originally was at Amazon, a company notoriously serious about working in the office, it was a total ridiculous exception that I was allowed to work from home. Fast forward into COVID era, it's like an absolute necessity. What do you mean? Of course, we're working from home. And if businesses are not prepared to support that, employees and talent will flee to businesses that can handle that in a confident way. I imagine if I'm a software engineer trying to make my mark and show companies that I can have a big impact. And the company that I'm working at, say in a highly regulated space, say in a somewhat slower technology industry, just literally does not give them jetpacks and rocket ships and all of the magic capabilities that come out of these AI tools. It's going to be real hard to put my resume up next to somebody else's resume where they got 9 things done and I got a half a thing done, and I'm supposed to look like I'm an amazing productive operator. I think you're going to get a real movement of talent to align with businesses that have these capabilities. And it's not just, of course, for software engineers, right? Like you were talking about the salesperson example. If I
Yep.
have a rocket ship CRM that knows everything about my customer, that handles all the input data entry because it's helping listen to my meetings and take notes and transcribe, it's doing all of the things about my job that feel a little robotic,
Yep.
because frankly they probably should be.
Yep.
And in many cases, a robot might do a better job of it. Some of this stuff requires a kind of patience and sort of joy of the trivia to be productive. So I think companies are going to start to see, same as like, I remember talking to a bunch of the early workspace adopters who were like, well, the kids in college expect workspace, and I'm not going
Right.
to be able to get at young talent if I don't meet
Right.
them where they are. If I've got a whole class of junior developers that are coming out absolutely expecting tools like, you know, code workbench and Copilot and a bunch of these other building blocks like
Right.
Cohere, Anthropic, Aider, all the rest of that. I don't know. Like, maybe I just don't get the applicants that I used to get. So that's that's a spot where I think, especially in the industries where these use cases have been made, pretty plain, and there are a set of competitors now, and not a single entrant that's like, hey, maybe you can do this thing, but there's a whole market and there's 5 or 6 companies that help a company do a given piece. I think employees are going to expect those capabilities, or they're going to find companies that have them.
For sure. And it's not just that if I'm an employer and I want to recruit and retain the best talent, I'm going to need these things because I agree completely with that. But the businesses also are going to have self-interest in this. And it's not just like in these kind of higher tech industries. I think this is, I mean, maybe this will be the boldest of the predictions, but this is recorded and you can quote me on this, but you look at manufacturing, they're traditionally pretty late adopters of a lot of high
Sure.
tech in our space. I think that it's going to be at most 18 months before they are going to be the ones saying, we want our employees wearing VR goggles that are telling them where the problem is and how to go fix it while they're looking at it. via AI generated, guidance, but reading the manual, giving them that insight, because not because that mechanic expects it, needs it for their job, although they may, but I think it's because that business now is going to say, we are losing, this machine's been down for hours because this mechanic has to go back. She's got to read the manual. She's got to consult with other engineers. And then she can go back and actually fix the thing versus she's wearing a headset. It tells her where the problem is. She screws something and we're done. I think so. It's both sides. It's going to be the employees for sure, but I think the businesses are going to come around to it. Even those who are typically not. It's almost like you wouldn't have a business today that would operate without having the internet. It's kind of like, of course, you walk onto a job site, you're going to have access to the internet. I think you're going to see the same for these AI
Well, and it's
enhancements.
same pattern. If you use you know AI tool as a synonym for having purpose-built software for the work that you do, right?
Sure.
I think you will either have companies that adopt this stuff and move into leadership positions, take more share, are able to operate, more productively than their counterparts, or smaller entrants who have these technologies will displace legacy businesses, right? And I mean, I think a lot of companies have kind of fallen into this pattern of we're big and established and we have the customer base. I'm going to go hunt around for some plucky upstart in our market and sort of gobble them up and see if I can adopt their workflow and their technical systems and their tools to take on the problem. I think maybe when the growth rate for businesses was something you know that happened over the course of decades, right? Like maybe that approach makes sense. If I'm one of those small startups that just has a demonstrable material performance advantage over my incumbents, I don't know if the speed is this high, it's only a couple of years, maybe I don't want to get bought. Maybe the valuations are a little higher. Maybe you're going to have to really pay me to sort of change your business, because otherwise I think I'll just eat you, right? So
Yeah.
that kind of competition powered by real differentials in performance between these kinds of businesses is a pretty big deal. But I think even that change is is sort of rooted in a companies are the ones that do innovation kind of worldview. The place where I think it gets most interesting, like and that's always been the spot where I think one framing for this forever has been shadow IT, right? Like
Hmm.
what does it take for me to go into the IT department as a set of employees and make a proposal that we do an RFP to find a piece of software to help us do the thing that we do? Right? Like, oh man, I'll see you in a year, right?
Right.
Some employee coming up with like, sorry, I've already got execs breathing down my neck about the stuff that I want to do. This stuff is too expensive. I got to go through the RFP, blah, blah, right? Like, all of those are words that sound like innovation dying in a horrible way.
Right.
So, and in the same way, right? If you're a startup or you're a brand new, team of developers, you're looking at the, most attractive problems. Of course, you're looking for the biggest markets. You're looking for problems that lots and lots of different kinds of companies have. So you don't feel like you're in this undiversified market space or you're stuck in a single vertical where if that vertical has a downturn, you're kind of really in trouble.
Right.
There's kind of a minimum viable size for the opportunity, both for individual companies to invest in and for startups to get invested in to go work with lots of different companies. And that threshold, that cutoff, is a place where I think AI is pulling the bar lower. Maybe you can get a startup built for a little less than you used to have to before. Maybe you can approach a little bit smaller market than you had to before. Maybe there's an opportunity there. But the real fallout of the floor is how much easier it is to build some of these kinds of solutions for individual employees with really niche problems. Like
Right.
every company is going to need a customer relationship man. Like what company doesn't have a tool for salespeople to write down what's going on with their sellers?
Right.
But like, there's lots of companies, man. Some of them do really weird stuff. So, and the result of that is that you've got these workflows that are just very, very unique to individual businesses that have never been subject to software automation or to
Yep.
augmentation by tooling. That, frankly, now are kind of their fair game. And
Yep.
that's the stuff where hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of little use cases that aren't big enough to earn a VC round, probably aren't big enough to have a competitive set of companies bidding to do that kind of work. but are certainly places where you can make your business more efficient. That's a huge unlock, right? Like that's a huge enabler for businesses to find new opportunities for efficiency that depend on the insight of the local people that are working the problem.
100%. Yeah, I mean, Benioff at Dreamforce, I think made some comment about, hundreds or thousands or whatever, lots and lots of these, small task doers that are unique, bespoke, custom to whatever wonky stuff goes on. Now, obviously, he's talking about that in the context of Salesforce, but I think that trend is exactly what you're touching on. That's what we're going to see lots of, and that's what's exciting about stuff like this platform emergence is that the barrier to entry from a individual technical skill set is dropping dramatically. So whereas not so long ago, I mean, when I started my career, you had to have somehow access to a data center if you wanted to work on computers. And that was like really hard to come by. And then this cloud thing came out, and oh my God, now everybody has access to spin up computers and can learn how to do things. And I think same was true for AI up until very recently, where you needed to have a significant, background in machine learning, and these are not like simple technologies. This is hardcore stuff, and you needed to really be a student of these technologies to build something meaningful. Now you can build stuff that's AI generated and has no code written whatsoever. You don't need to have any technical background. So I think that is really exciting. We're seeing the emergence of that need, and you're democratizing, making more accessible the means of creating those solutions. So I think we're ripe for a huge burst of these types of solutions out in the marketplace.
Yeah, I heard a framing for that kind of woke me up a little bit where um I think the whole industry since I started in software has been dove on this concept of software as a service where you know running computers is a pain in the neck and operations below, and nobody really wants to deal with having to buy and set up all this stuff, and the cost profiles for that don't scale with the utility that you're getting. And it was Salesforce that was. I remember building this website. I was trying to, tell people we're going to charge money for access to this website, and they're like, "What are you going to make another Salesforce?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, that's not a bad model to copy. I think that
Right.
sounds sane." This is way before SaaS had been coined as a moniker, and uh, and so what I'm catching now, right? If I think of the kinds of things that businesses go out to services companies, whether those are software service businesses or other categories of service, right? If you can tightly define what you want over a time frame with things like a contract, and you have a real clear definition of if you hire an employee directly, and you could chuck all sorts of weird, how many different bizarre things have I put on your plate over the course of the last 4 years. Trust me, the next 4 years is going to get weirder. But if you can carve that all the way down to like, look, these are my acceptance criteria. This is how I know you're going to get done. If you have the ability to hire a service company to do a given thing, maybe these AI tools start to feel like they're in a place where lots of those categories of service can be reduced to a software. So take
Yep.
that label and reverse it. Instead of software as a service, it's service as a software, which like for everybody out here in scalability land where you're trying to figure out how to get more utility out of these tools. I think that's a huge
Yep.
and useful reframing for some of the stuff we will see in 25, where little categories of service stuff that you're used to either having teams of people do internally on your side, or that you're used to paying third parties to take on because it's outside of the specific skill set you want to build in your employees. Maybe that's stuff that startups will be built, or little initiatives inside of your business will take on to build the technologies that make it so you can turn that stuff into just software. And that implies the full set of problems associated with software, right?
Right.
Like these now
Right.
services, which are software, are not just human resources problems. How do I make sure that they actually do what they said they were going to do? What happens when somebody goes rogue and behaves in a bad way? You also now inherit all of the gnarly software problems. What happens if somebody compromises the interfaces that we're talking about? What happens
Yep.
if the software, the licensing changes and now I no longer have access to it? What if I end up in some sort of competitive situation with the vendor of that software? So those, I think for a lot of businesses, the evaluation process is going to get a lot more sophisticated as they have to sort of grapple with not just service management issues, but now software management.
100%, yeah. And I think that just exemplifies that the pace of change I think that's being spurred by AI is still increasing, which I think some folks are like, well, didn't this generative AI thing kind of hit its inflection point, a couple of years ago when ChatGPT came to the market? And I think that was the very beginning, right? And so I think we're not just seeing growth, we're seeing continued explosion here of the pace of innovation and what that means for businesses. So for everybody listening out there, even if you're somebody like me and you live in AI land and this is your life, keep your eyes glued, right? Because again, it's almost every 15 minutes there is something fundamentally changing out there. And I think that's the last thing that I really see happening, as time is going to go on, is that as it is now, if I take a week off from really paying attention to our marketplace, I've lost kind of some of the newest, hottest stuff. I think that's going to shorten next year. I think if you take off 2 days, you're going to use a model on a Tuesday, you're going to use that same model again on a Friday, and it's going to be better because the pace of innovation is so rapid. So, yeah, really exciting, really exciting space to be in right now, and will be, I think, for the next couple of years.
Well, Simon, I agree with you totally, and thank you for your insights to the audience, folks here. I hope you can tell we're about as close to this thing as you can get. We all need to keep our coffee cups full. There is a lot to be digested in this scene, and I think what is going to be most exciting about 2025 is the stuff we can't even expect yet. So looking forward to seeing you on the other side in that year and the years to come, and excited to help you take those steps to what's next with the team here at SADA. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Cloud and Clear. Check the show notes for links to this week's topics. And don't forget to connect with us on Twitter @Cloud and Clear and our website, sada.com.